see you guys in the dark.
A couple of years ago, I was home alone. At the time, I was still living with my family, but they had gone on vacation, and thus I had the house to myself. Well, I had been working a lot of hours that week, and it was my day off. So naturally, I called the boys for some cold ones. Cold ones were drank, and about 11 p.m. everyone decided to go home. Drunk and tired, I locked my doors and went upstairs to my room and knocked out cold, until I woke up from the ding-dong of my doorbell. It was about 4 a.m., if I can recall correctly. Needless to say, I was still kind of drunk. For a few seconds, I asked myself, what the fuck? Not sure if I actually heard my doorbell, or if it was just my imagination. So I waited, and then I heard it again. I got up groggy, and went to my hallway and yelled, "I'll be right there." I headed downstairs. As I made my way down, I panicked. What if one of my friends got in a crash, or never made it home? They weren't drunk like I was when they left, but still, you never know. Or maybe I thought it was one of them returning for something. As I got to the door, I stupidly, something I'd never do sober due to it being so late, opened the door. It was my ex. Just for some quick background, me and my ex didn't end on good terms. We dated for years. She cheated. I was heartbroken. We went back and forth. And it took me about 1.5 years to get over her. Mainly by blocking her on my number. All social media, and even email. Yes, she even contacted me through that. To put it kindly, she filled the crazy stereotype. Plus, it had been maybe 3 months since I finally cut her off, so needless to say, I was confused. When I opened the door, just said hi, in my shy manner. Confused, I asked, "What are you doing here, Jenny?" She just said, "I wanted to see you, and talk a little bit." So then I said, "You know what time it is, right?" She said, "I know, it's late, but I'm on my way to school, and wanted to stop by. Since it's on the way, I knew you'd be home alone." Now this definitely weirded me out, because how the fuck did she know that? My family wasn't in contact as far as I knew, and I had family block her off on their own social media. So I asked her, "How do you know that?" And she said, "Oh, I just know." We kind of paused, and she asked me to come in to talk. Stupidly, I told her okay. After coming in, she pet my dogs, and we went to my living room and sat down. We talked about how we were both doing, and then what I expected. She basically begged me to take her back. I said no. She began to cry, and so did I. Well, one thing led to another, and then to my room, and you can imagine what occurred. Guilty and regretful as soon as we finished, I made an excuse that I had to work the next day. She pleaded me to let her stay, and I kept saying no, to which she began screaming at me for using her, to which I replied some mean things and kicked her out. So that was that, right? Wrong. After about 20 minutes, I had returned to my room until I heard pounding on my door. Instantly, I knew who it was, and went down to open the door. It was my ex. She came inside without even asking. She looked flustered, like she had been jogging or something, and definitely still looked pretty angry. But there was one thing, my gut feeling, and it was telling me something was definitely off. When she came in, I had noticed that one of my dogs, I have two, began to make low growling noises at her. This never occurs since they've known her for years and liked her. I noticed it, but I kept my cool. I asked her, "What do you want?" I said, "You have to leave." She just looked at me with those piercing eyes and said it in a shaking voice. "Why do you always do this? Why can't you just, ugh?" She got closer to me. At the same time, keep in mind she was wearing a zip-up hoodie with 2 pockets on each side. She had her right hand free, but her other hand was in her pocket. I wasn't 100% sure, but I could tell she was gripping something. My mind raced and thought, fuck, am I about to get stabbed to death by my ex and not be found until my family comes back? Almost on cue after thinking this, my second dog, let's call her Ash, began to bark like crazy at her. Ash is a weird dog. She is a lazy dog, and she rarely ever barks, especially at people. So this on top of my ex giving me this weird feeling actually made me a little scared. To which I then told my Jenny, "Look, I'm sorry what happened was a mistake, but I have work, and you have to leave." This lit the fuse. She went ballistic. I'm talking spit in my face and strained red eyes yelling. To be honest, I can't remember what she had yelled about, but it probably wasn't good. The entire time of her rant, she never took her hand out of her pocket, and then she finally calmed down, just stood there inches from my face, breathing heavily. Dog still barking at her the entire time. The look on her face is that one can tell someone wants to do or say something, but they're just holding back from doing what they really want to do, like a threat of mental power. Personally, I didn't want to find out what was in her pocket or what she wanted to do. So annoyed and very much worried after this verbal onslaught, I just told her simply, "Get the fuck out, or I'm calling the cops." Angrily, she paused and said, "You'll regret this," and then left. So I locked my doors, went straight to my room, and looked out the window for the next couple of hours. She didn't come back. Since that day, I haven't seen or talked to my ex. Not sure if I was being paranoid or if I was really about to regret letting her in. So to my ex, let's not meet. Ever again. There was this girl I reluctantly dated for 2 weeks. I ended up because she was constantly messaging me and got mad when I didn't message her when I was on bloody holiday. Even after I broke up with her, she would be mad when I didn't respond to her texts. Now, you see, I go to this tabletop gaming store every Friday in town. It's about 45-minute drive from where I live. She goes there too on the same day and time. Anyway, she kept being continuously flirtatious and even went to kiss me when we were there. Eventually, I had found someone I was genuinely romantically interested in. I told her because she was still my best friend at the time, despite the whole drama thing. This is where the fun begins. So, in the 2 weeks we were dating, she would constantly attention seek from me about her mental illness, such as depression and anxiety. Not that I don't believe she had a mental illness, just not one of the two. And she would self-harm and talk about suicide. I was obviously quite upset at this, and it continued into our relationship. Anyways, we were at the store, and I told her I was interested in another girl. The second I was interested in another girl, she started crying and hitting me. Went inside the store to get her car keys and ran out to her car while I just stood there shocked. I went back inside the store to talk to mates and to do some painting. Then she comes back, completely stone-faced, and hands me a note. She did it in a way that made her new, fresh cuts extremely visible. I took the note and put it in my bag without even making eye contact at her. I was disgusted that she would even try and get my attention this way. I don't talk to her for the rest of the night. And at around 11 p.m., I head home, get inside, and read the note. It was a suicide note where she was saying she was sorry. She's going because some bitch stole me from her. We stopped dating 3 months ago. Then I got a message on my Snapchat 2 minutes after reading it. It's a nude caption. "Won't you stay just for this?" She isn't even that attractive. I say no, and then she starts saying that she's actually going to do it. She doesn't talk to me for months. The girl I had left her for and I didn't work out. No biggie. Part of it was emotional strain from me thinking a poor young lass was dead because of me. It was about 2 months into the relationship. I am now with my loving girlfriend. A year and a half together now. Me and my girlfriend were lying in bed, playing Mortal Kombat X on my PlayStation, when I get a call from an unknown number. I answer it. She says that she's just regained consciousness, and I ask, "Who is this?" She responds with her name, and it sends chills down my spine. I say okay, and just hang up. I call all hospitals near where she lived, and they said they haven't had any patients with that name. I text her, quit your bullshit, and block her. She gets another number and texts me again. I block it. The cycle still goes on, just slowing down now. The most recent message being, have you broken up with your girlfriend yet? Nudes for nudes? Recently, I saw her looking around outside my house. I opened the window and told her to piss off. Audrey, if you haven't killed yourself again, let's not meet again. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.
I'll see you guys in the dark.
Okay, so this all happened about 3 years ago or so. I was around 17. I'm not going to dramatize anything, but let me go ahead and say that I think, personally, that this is a pretty bizarre story. There are some details about my actual relationship I'm going to leave out. I kind of want to answer this story/question, but I don't think I'll ever get one. I've been wanting to get some outside opinions on it, aside from my friends and family too, though, so here it goes. My ex Jane and I lived about an hour away from each other. We met at a park out of state and ended up living kind of close. We hit it off and dated a month after we met. Our entire relationship lasted a year, and she was my first girlfriend ever. From the very beginning of the relationship, she would discuss her best friend named Patrick. He was in his late 20s. She, as a reminder, was 17 and worked in a bookstore. He lived in her town, and she had known him since she was 13. From very early on, I thought the stories she would tell about him were kind of outlandish. She would talk about watching him get into bar fights with a guy that went by Hammer, how once they pretended to rob a gas station, but left money behind on the counter, and had to jump off a roof to escape security, in which Patrick broke his ankle. Another time, Patrick got a brand new Mustang that they wanted to crash into a lake, so they jumped out at the last second. She told me that one towards the end of our relationship, at which point I was completely skeptical of everything she said. You get the idea. The stories she told seemed clearly exaggerated or downright fake. Part of me thought she was trying to impress me for whatever reason. Here are some other important facts I don't exactly know where to put, so I'll lay them out there. Jane was an artist. She drew all the time in her journal. She rarely drew people as they actually were. She drew people as monsters or animals. For example, she always drew me as a giraffe. She was pretty good at it. Patrick's last name, according to her, was pronounced and spelled a certain way. Willington. Patrick Willington. Patrick's dad owned a successful company out of the state that Patrick would inherit. Jane had a much older brother, who was in his late 20s as well, that had joined the military and moved to Korea. She only saw him every few years or so. Okay, now continuing. Jane would tell me that Patrick was very protective of her. She would tell me about him, and he would always be unsure of what he thought. She said he wanted to beat me up sometimes, and that he'd hurt me if I hurt her. If she told him about something silly I did, he'd think I was an idiot and call me stupid. He also thought I was gay. This is all, of course, second-hand information. Never once in the entire relationship do I think I spoke to him. I'd also like to remind everyone that this was my first relationship. I was very insecure, very confused, and there was more going on in it that complicated some things. I did not have the best relationship. The thing is, I really didn't have any reason not to believe her, you know. She had no reason to lie about any of this, but I was still very skeptical. Sometimes Jane would go to Patrick's house really late at night. she'd say. She said she'd sleep on his couch and that he would literally throw her out of the house in the morning. Sometimes she said she had to sneak out of her house to go to his. He lived within walking distance, apparently. One time, later in the relationship, Patrick invited her on an out-of-state trip back to his hometown. They were going to stay in a mountain cabin for a week. I was not happy about that. I was more upset when she said she wouldn't tell her parents and that they'd leave on a bus in the morning. Now, at this point in the relationship, I was very unsure of what was going on with this Patrick person. But Jane said that if I told her parents about the trip, that she wouldn't be able to go, and that Patrick would hate me, and she'd be pissed. It was important to her because Patrick apparently would be forced to move away soon to work at his dad's company. And she said she'd never see him again, so she needed to go. Well, when the day came for her to leave, Patrick never showed up to get her or whatever. She was very upset, even though he'd be back in town one more time. On another tidbit, Jane's parents never once mentioned Patrick ever. She never brought him up around them either. The only time she mentioned Patrick to anyone else was to my dad once, after we broke up. She told my dad one of the outlandish stories I mentioned. My dad was flabbergasted. Basically, I had told him about all of this, but hearing it in person was crazy. Patrick was to have a birthday party once. I was invited. It was going to be at his house, starting at midnight. I said I couldn't go do that, but that I'd get him a present instead. I got him a toolkit. She said he'd like that, and I gave it to her for him. She said she brought it, and that he did in fact like it. She said the party lasted until about 6 a.m. Patrick sent me a text from her phone once, when she was with him. It was standard behavior for him. He said I was a pansy or something, and that he'd beat me up. That was early on. Now, here is where I think things were very interesting. Jane lived nearby an elementary school. She walked with me there, and said his house was close to it. So she leads me to the back of the school, where there is woodland. She brings me to the edge of the woods, and has me look in. I see this very old, wooden tin house sort of structure. It has broken windows. It's filthy. It's falling apart. The path to it is covered by bushes and trees. She said that that was his house. Oh, and at this point, he had moved to work at the company out of state. I asked her if she was joking. She said no, that he wasn't a very tidy person, even when he lived there. I thought briefly that maybe the house was just weird looking on the outside, but actually good on the inside. But there's no way that it was. It was abandoned. Anyways, that same day, she asked if I wanted to go inside. It was hot, getting dark, no one knew exactly where we were, and I didn't want to get cut up by bushes or go in the sketchy house. So I said maybe another time. She insisted, saying that Patrick wanted us to check on things, but eventually she gave up. This was very close to the end of our relationship. I asked her a few more questions, like, "You went through those bushes and stuff every time you went to go see him?" She said yes, but they had overgrown since he left. I also asked how he drove out of his house, how anyone visited him otherwise, how he got mail. She eventually realized that maybe I didn't exactly believe her, and she got mad. I said I was sorry, and that it was just different to me. She insisted that it was true. I let it go. Well, we ended up breaking up shortly after, but I had a hard time coping with the breakup, and ended up speaking with her again later. She was on a bus with her class to go to some trip. Well, I lost connection with her, and called back. A young man answered. I asked who it was. He said it was Patrick Willingson, not Willington. So I opened up with a question about his last name, and also why he had her phone. He said that was always his last name. He said he was on his office phone. I kept asking him questions about himself that only the real Patrick would know. I heard noises in the background. He would pause a minute before answering. I think she just handed the phone to a classmate and told him what to say. Frankly, that's the only real answer to that one. Well, he hung up, and I called her back. Jane answered and said that Patrick told her I somehow got connected to his phone, since he was in her recent contacts or something. Clearly BS, but I played along with it, and left it at that. Oh, and he wanted to beat me up, of course, badly for breaking her heart. Well, I kept speaking to her for a week or two, and we both finally got closure about the relationship. But as I was recounting this experience with a friend, I realized something. Probably just a creepy coincidence, but I had said Jane was an artist, and that she always drew people as other things. Well, I saw many drawings of Patrick. She always said he wore this dark coat and ripped pants or something. She, as usual, didn't draw him as a human. She drew him as a skeleton. Really creeped me out for whatever. I may be forgetting some other weird things that happened, but that's the main stuff. Now, to tie it all together, here are some stuff that I have done about it since. I tried using Google Earth to look at his house, since I remember exactly where she showed me. The trees are too thick to see in, and there's construction nearby, so it may not even be there anymore. I have not gone back in person since it is too far away, and also close to her house. I have Googled and researched it countless times, and anything I could remember. No usual results. She used to mention him on social media sometimes. A friend of mine, who had trouble grasping all of this, found her profile and saw him mentioned. Recently, too. I have a few theories about this. Patrick was sort of an imaginary friend character that she made up to fill a place of her much older brother who moved away, and she didn't see very often. Second, it was all BS that she made up for whatever reason, to impress me sometimes, to coerce me to other things. 3. It was part of a much greater disorder problem. 4. Patrick didn't exist in some way, shape, or form, but she highly exaggerated him and rarely saw him, so she told me whatever she wanted about him. It may not be as creepy to all of you since you're on the outside of my social circle, but like I said, that's why I'm posting. But to me personally, I am bothered by this. Jane had a tendency to be very violent and say threatening things to me. Why did she make it all up? Why did she show me the house and say that it was his? What was in the house? Regardless if anyone lived there, did she ever actually go in like she said she did? Did she sleep there sometimes, or visit late at night like she said? If so, what in the world was she doing? Did someone really somehow live there? Why did she draw him as a skeleton? Why did she have strong feelings about me? Why did she change his last name? Why did she do the weird things with the phone and classmate? How many of her other loved ones know about this? What would have happened if I went in that house? Etc. Some of this is probably heightened by my anxiety, but I do think it's a weird story. I plan on using it for a fictional story one day, and of course, changing some stuff for it. But anyways, thank you all for listening. There have been suggestions to go back to the house with friends and check it out. I mentioned in a comment that has been considered before, but there are some problems. The house was actually 2 stories high, so I'm not sure if it's stable enough. It may also not be there if the construction I saw on the Google map continued. And of course, it's close to her house and an elementary school, so lots of potential for it to go badly, even with friends. If I ever go back, I will take pictures and update everything. As for contacting her, her friends, her family to learn more, while I understand the desire for answers, I simply won't do that. Everyone's moved on, and hopefully happy and better off now, so no need to start potential trouble. I for sure wish I had a complete explanation, but for now, we just have to guess and theorize, I suppose. We've got some pretty solid answers, and some pretty wild ideas. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.